easy to increase the speeds. You play around with cameras or you do something and you can increase the speed.
I mean, to put it in context, you can light fibre optic cables a range of speeds. I mean, if you started off at, say, 100 megabits, which is 50 times the 2 megabits which we've been talking about before. So 100 megabits is regarded by most people, myself included, as the starting point for next generation broadband. You can, the optics to go on the end of that bit of fibre probably costs you about £150 a pair. To take that up to a gigabit, the optics would probably cost you about 170. So I mean, there's virtually no difference to go for the gigabit. If you wanted to go to 10 gigabits, the optics go up to probably about £700. So and those are one-offs. There's no onward usage. So I mean, to all intents and purposes, don't worry about bandwidth. When you want it, it's going to be there.
Okay, any other questions before we move on? Ah, yes, no, yes, please. Yeah.
What's the maintenance routine and the lifespan of the infrastructure once it's in place?
Yeah, the maintenance regime and the life expectancy. Maintenance regime, there isn't one. It's basically, if it breaks, you fix it. The life expectancy of fibre is something that people debate. Probably, we know it's in excess of 20 years, it's probably out in the region of 50 years, modern fibre. But the other point is it's usually laid within a duct. And once you've dug a hole and you put a duct in and covered it up, unless the duct gets damaged, the duct is going to be there for, like water piping or anything else, it's going to be there for a hell of a long time. So even if the fibre does get a bit old and a bit brittle and you decide you've got problems with it, you can pull it out and put a new one in.
The point just on that, just to amplify a little bit on Barry's point, is that the cost is not actually the fibre itself, the cost is laying that fibre. So the point is that when you've gone to the trouble of digging the hole and putting the duct in, replacing it with a new tube of fibre is not actually a very expensive thing. One of the reasons why we like using schools where there is existing fibre, for example here in Great Astley there's existing fibre, one of the reasons why we're interested in stringing fibre aerially, in other words, putting it on a telephone pole or an electric pole, one of the reasons why we may be asking some of you to dig the very last bit from your gate to your home is that the cost of this is largely in the digging. And if we can drop the cost of digging either by not digging at all or you doing the digging, we massively increase our ability to deploy. Yeah.
If there is actual damage to the cable between the endpoints, how easy is it to fix?
It's pretty easy. I mean, if you can catch the guy with the JCB dug it up, he gets the bill. But I mean, you can usually see there's equipment that allows you to put a light pulse down and back, and it tells you how far from the end of the break it is. You walk along, you get to that point, you just splice in a new bit. It's a bit like splicing a new bit of rope into a rope that's got a break in it. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's perfectly doable. So it's really not that difficult. Just picking up on something that Rory said, put it in context, the telecoms companies talk about roughly £40 a metre to dig roads and things. That's out in the rural bits, about £40 a metre. The actual fibre for 4 fibres is about 12 pence a metre. So, as a proportion of the total cost, forget it, it's noise. Funny enough, copper is a lot more expensive, and it's always been dug up by tinkers who are sort of selling it off to scrap dealers as well. Fibre has no resale value, it's dirt cheap.
Please, sir. Yeah.
Can you just say something about upload speeds? You talked a lot about download.
Right.
What about upload?
Download and upload speeds, Barry.
Yeah, with what you've got at the moment, it's asynchronous, i.e. the download speed to you, it takes the bulk of the capacity of the link, and there's only a very little bit left going in the opposite direction. That's just a reflection of the capacity of what you can put down the cable. The decision has been made. You can make it symmetrical, you could make it equal both ways. The problem is most people are net consumers of data from the internet and they're not pushing much into it, so it works well. Next generation is always, almost inevitably, if you're talking about a fibre-based system, it's symmetrical. So when I'm talking about 100 megs, it'll be 100 megs down and up. If I'm talking about a gig, it'll be a gig up, down and up. So if you are doing high quality video conferencing type things, it's going to work beautifully both ways, whereas the current stuff, you might get it one way, but the stuff you're pushing the other will be crippled.
And for those of you who, just to expand on that means, some of you may have encountered this, you're using current satellite connections, that if you're trying to upload a file, if you're trying to run a fancy business off the internet which involves uploading, it's slow. Yeah, sorry, please.
Well, my question was, what are the limitations from satellite communication, because in a fortnight's time a new satellite is to be launched to flood Northern Europe with broadband service.
Satellites, I think that the biggest difference with satellites really is the laws of physics. A geostationary satellite is 32,000 kilometres above the Earth's surface. The radio signal has to get up and back, and that takes time. So when you've got a satellite link, you've always got something called latency, and that's the time it takes to get up and down. It does affect that certain protocols and certain applications you want to run do suffer from that latency. Others don't. So satellite has some applications, but the things I would say about satellite is, one, it suffers from the latency issue. Secondly, it is asymmetric, so normally your download and your upload is very different. And there are limitations on the amount of total bandwidth that's available because of the footprint of the satellite covers quite a large area of land, and all the people in it are sharing that footprint. So it's something that works very well for odd, isolated ones. I wouldn't try and use, personal opinion, but I wouldn't try and use satellite as a mass rollout. But for niches, there will be places where it works very, very well.
Yes, please. We'll take, actually, I think 3 together, because I am keen to move on to Mars. We don't have very long, but please, yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking, in Crosby Ravensworth, for example, we have a school with a fast fibre connection. If we then run fibre through to Maudsleyburn and to Regal, would it be like, for example, if we start off with 10 megabits per second, would we end up with 3.3 megabits per second each? Or would we, at the end point, still with 10 megabits per second?
Actually, we'll take one question at a time.
Here we are on a nice sunny day. The answer is, where you've got something like a 10 megabit feed and you've got multiple people, you are sharing it. I mean, it's almost like having a water pipe, and if you've got 3 people, being fed from one water pipe, if the other 2 aren't using it, you get the full flow of water. If all 3 of you turn your taps on, you get a reduced flow. It's exactly the same with broadband. So I've got 10 megabit feed in, 3 people sharing it. It'll depend. If you're all online, then you'll be slowed down.
And if you're all using it equally, you'd all get 3.3. Yeah.
For running the cable into domestic properties, could we use existing ducting? Could we shove it through the drains?
If you mean your own personal local drains, there's probably no reason why you couldn't. I mean, the actual fibre cable is waterproof. All you need to be aware of, you need to make sure it's clipped so that it wouldn't get washed through or anything like that. There are commercial organisations that install it in sewers and things like that, and it works fine. And there's a nice thing about fibre, it is variable. You can hang it in the air, you can bury it in the ground, you can put it in ducts in sewers and things like that. So I mean, it's part of what we would be talking about when we're talking about deploying fibre across our area, is trying to find opportunities like that. If you know a culvert or something that could be used to avoid digging up a road, or anything that could be reused like that, then yes, yeah, very useful.
Okay, and the last question, gentlemen here.
What about the security of the data if you're using fibre?
Well, it's as secure as you're likely to get. I mean, at the end of the day, if you've got very high security applications, you don't try and secure your network, you secure the data above it by encrypting it before you put it onto the network. But in terms of trying to intercept data, fibre is much, much harder to intercept than copper. Anybody can tap onto copper, there are crocodile clips and things you can do. You can't do that with fibre, you've actually got to have very specialised equipment to get into it. So yes, I mean, if MI5 wanted to snoop on what you're doing on fibre, I'm sure they'd find a way of doing it, but your neighbour couldn't. It would be on that level. Okay,
Barry, I'm so grateful, and I apologise for it was a very useful session. I apologise for
PowerPoint.
Oh, Barry! Well, maybe if there's time at the end, we can come back to your beautiful PowerPoint. But I'm going to bring Miles back now. Thank you very much. Thank you, Barry.